Hello, and welcome to another episode of Game Over, where we discuss interesting topics while playing some badass video games. I'm joined today by a couple of friends of mine. Want to say hello, Stephanie?
Hello. This will be my first time recording, so be kind to me.
And Ahmed.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, how are you guys doing? My name is Ahmed Yassin Al-Natchi and I'm the founder and lead developer of Colossus Studio. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, guys.
Hey.
Wow, that was way too formal than I thought. That's good.
Everyone sounds so fancy here.
I know, right?
We do.
So
what's our subject today?
We got an interesting game for you guys today. Shadow of the Colossus, which is a game that's been out for quite some time. I'm not sure if you've played it, Stephanie, but I know, Ahmed, you dealt within the Shadow of the Colossus world before, correct?
Back in the PlayStation 2 days, and I was extremely confused as a kid as to, what do I do? Until I figured out, you have to shine your sword, and it leads you to where you need to go, and it was such a magical moment when I found that out.
Yeah, it was really back in the day when, games were still developing. It was an original, it was kind of an idea of its own. It came together perfectly in the end, and it had an amazing idea. But people were not accustomed to it, I think. So, I was just as confused until I sort of, got the hang of it. But so recently, Blue Point Games, a new studio that's really good at making remasters of games, decided to, take this project and remake it from scratch. And as you can see, it's
not the studio that actually made the game that remastered it. It's a different studio.
It is a different studio, Blue Point Games, and they do that. They do that with all their games. So it's a studio that's specific for just remastering games from scratch. Getting them and remaking them into what you can see now, just a beautiful work of art. But so the key thing about this game is that you're going around sort of trying to save your lover by hunting down these mythical beasts. There's really the context in the beginning is just so confusing. I guess that brings the point that you were making, Ahmed, where they don't really explain to you what you need to do or who these creatures are. It's just such a mystery, and then slowly it becomes a really fun adventure that just becomes memorable for you.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the most memorable games, 100%.
Exactly. This is actually what the topic of today's podcast is about. It's these mythical beasts, because I believe that when they were making this game, they researched that. For you see, a lot of the mythical creatures within the game are based off of mythical creatures that we may already have heard of from history books or have seen them at some point on papyrus or, tablets, medieval mythical beasts. And so I feel like it's such an interesting topic in terms of, what creatures existed before that we may not have heard of. Since even during this time that we live in, there are so many creatures that, we at some point had seen but have now grown extinct just because of sort of the aggressive nature of man, where if they feel like there's any threat to them from these creatures, then they would essentially kill them off. So this is a topic that's dear to me because I feel like there is so much lore behind these creatures that is just very interesting. At some point, I started researching it while I was working on my own degree for game design. I was researching some of these creatures, and it was just such an interesting topic for me. What do you guys think?
Interesting. I'm my view on the subject. I know maybe it's a little early, but I do believe to a certain point that a huge number of these mythical creatures, from when something bad happens to you as a human, you look for a way to get some logic out of it, to understand why it's happening. And if you don't get why that bad thing is happening to you, or even good thing, you get confused and frustrated with life, and it just doesn't make sense. And I do believe that a large proportion of these monsters or creatures, or whatever it is, it's just our way of trying to make logic of this confusing, chaotic world.
So you think it's mostly symbolism with these mythical creatures? You think that they didn't necessarily exist, but they symbolized a feeling or an emotion?
I think
Well, I
one
think it
very
happened,
creative person started them, then or other people like just started believing in them.
Interesting.
This can
That's
also
an interesting
count
perspective.
for real creatures in general because, over in Egypt, they worshipped the cat because they thought it brought good luck to them.
Mhm.
Or just, just in general, worshipping general creatures in life because, superstition. Like the black cat became the sign of bad luck, but over in Asia, it's a sign of good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly
Different
my
creatures
point.
mean
It's
different things
just
to different
us
people.
trying to make logic out of life, I believe.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is they made so many different versions of that too. Now that you mentioned it, Stephanie. So it wasn't just the cat. The cat came and sort of become a mythical beast of its own. Anubis, who is also known to be a god in Egypt, actually
Was that
had.
guy a dog?
Yeah,
The god of the sun, I believe.
he's supposedly a dog, right? But if you notice, there's a lot of fur around his head that makes him look more like feline, right? More like the Sphinx, who is like the head of
Legends, so
the head of a human and the body of a cat, right? A wild cat.
it's some sort of really creative person who went all out, and it was just so good that people were like, I'm gonna worship that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's actually, and they made money off that probably.
I never actually thought about it
like that.
It's like pray to this deity that you can only get to through me.
I never actually.
It makes sense. It allows me to blame someone if it doesn't happen.
I never actually thought of it like that, guys. I mean, it sort of does make sense, like, for example, with horror games, such a famous genre, you always feel like the creatures were drawn by someone who may have issues of their own, and that's why they came up with something so grotesque. And so, I never thought that, all these creatures like the chimeras and like Anubis and the cats from olden times, or the kraken, or those creatures, those mythical beasts from Greek mythology. I never thought that it could be like that, where it's just people let sort of their imagination flow, and when they created that idea of that monster, even though it became so famous, it was just something from within their own inner depths, per se. But
remember,
at the same time,
an opinion. It's not a fact. Like,
I know. But at the same time, that's the point that I was about to make. At the same time, there are records of creatures that we've never heard of. They found fossils.
Yes.
They found fossils of creatures that they can't even, like, they just put random names for it. They just gave random names for it because they don't even know what it was called at that point when it existed. Whether it be dinosaurs or sea creatures that they still haven't discovered, or like those islands from. I don't know if you guys ever watched the movie Life of Pi. It's supposedly based on true events that somebody ended up at an island that's sort of off the grid and saw all these creatures that nobody has ever heard of. Like creatures that do things that just are miraculous if you could see it. And so
as I said, what I'm saying is just purely an opinion.
Yeah.
For me to make logic of things.
Yeah, and it does make sense that a lot of these creatures that seem like logical, or there's no way there was like a chimera, for example, like a creature with three faces, one of a lion, one of a serpent, and one of like a hound, a wild hound with like a weird tail and all that. That sounds more like it was made up. It doesn't sound like something that could have actually existed at some point. But you have.
But why was it made up? That's where the real mystery is.
Well, yeah, like
if we
you
go
said,
into imagery of mystical beast, one of the most interesting is actually from the Bible in Exodus, where you describe a creature with eyeballs all over its body, and still boggles my mind.
See, so that's another interesting thing where there are records of these creatures in scripture that people believe in and they trust that everything in it is true. So like that creature, for example. Do you know more about it, Stephanie?
I would have to go back and look at it, but I still believe most of it is symbolism, but just the imagery enough.
So you think
because,
it was?
I think angels.
Okay.
Also, the thing about angels is that in the Bible, they're not said to really have wings except for one type.
Mm-hmm. So angels, so that could be. So here's the thing, angels. I feel like it's a topic of controversy, right? Because angels are not really beasts, though, right? I feel like angels are sort of imagine people. Imagine
people who died.
Well, no, not people as in us, but people. But they don't really have free will, because what defines a human is his free will to make his own choices. But angels carry the will of God, so they just follow what God ordains. So I think they're not necessarily they shouldn't really be considered as creatures. They're more towards our life form, but just like a much higher form of that. Angels are made from light, as opposed to us.
I think it's a guessing game at this point. Like there are some things that we do not have the adequate knowledge and facts to even give our opinion on.
Actual statement.
It is what it is in the sense. Yeah.
I guess
you guys can say my theory is better than your theory, and so forth, but we will never know for sure until, we actually get there, so.
You guys, the viewers, you can tell us. The viewers can actually tell us what they think in the comments. Like, should angels be considered as sort of a higher life form, similar to humans, or even, a higher class than humans, or should they be considered as beasts, as mythical creatures?
I think they're just humans on a higher mental state, honestly. More aware of the truth, honestly.
I know for us as Muslims, we believe angels to be creations of light. So God created the angels from light, and they just carry the will of God. They don't have free will.
That's the thing, though. I think humans are people that need to go through the process of learning, and then once we pass on, we can slowly go up to that state of higher awareness.
Transcendence. That's a good way of looking at it.
Which is why I say they're more humanoid, but on a higher mental state.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we should go through some of these creatures that I, at least personally, thought were interesting. The first one being one of my favorites, especially from that movie, Clash of the Titans, the Kraken. I'm pretty sure it's common for you guys. So it's like one of the really popular ones.
I haven't seen it, actually.
You've never heard of the Kraken?
I haven't either.
Like the movie or the creature?
I haven't seen the movie.
Okay, so the Kraken is, think of like the biggest octopus. Exactly. Think of the biggest octopus.
Like a generic, ship out at sea, and then this big tentacle monster tries to, pull it down under. That sort of thing.
Exactly.
That's the Kraken.
It traces back its origin.
It's a really octopus on steroids.
Yeah, pretty much. It ate a little too many little creatures.
He went to the gym way too many times. A lot of arm days,
So according to this article, it traces its origins back to a giant fish from Norse mythology called the Hafgufa. That's an odd name. The Kraken first entered popular folklore as a titanic octopus or squid. So it can be a mix of both. So yeah, you're
depending on how many legs it has, basically.
Pretty much. It was spotted by fishermen off the coasts of Norway and Greenland. So in this case, it wasn't actually a figment of someone's imagination. In this case, I believe 18th century. So centuries ago, someone actually spotted what would later on be called a kraken. And it was essentially a massive octopus or squid with plenty of tentacles.
The thing is, it actually wouldn't surprise me if something like that actually existed somewhere deep in the sea somewhere, because We've seen the bones of, the dinosaurs. Who knows? They were all on steroids back in the day.
Yeah,
It's with like chickens on steroids.
and see, the thing is, like, the reason why I was skeptical on calling it an octopus or squid is because usually they have a limited amount of tentacles, right? Like for octopuses, I believe it's 8 tentacles, correct? They can only have 8 tentacles.
Mm-hmm.
But with the Kraken, if you guys notice, there's a lot more than 8, isn't there?
I don't know, man. Remember that humans are pretty dramatic creatures. So like maybe it's just like 2 arms and like there were 17 of them.
Yeah, that might actually be the case. But so on many accounts of like when the Kraken is brought up, it's usually hundreds of tentacles or something crazy like that, and it's massive in scale.
That sounds weird. But
Yeah.
it's called colossal squid. That they found it in the ocean. It's absolutely ginormous.
Okay, so you think it could have been a giant squid?
Maybe like they saw a giant squid and they like dramatized it.
Yeah,
they saw it
what I
off
think
the shore.
too,
Because again, guys, this is 18th century, so they probably didn't even have the technology to properly see what's out there.
That's the problem. They didn't have the technology to properly see it, so their imagination fills the picture.
That could
all
have
they
been
saw
it.
was this big creature dragging a ship down, and they were like, "Oh my gosh!" And then
Or more like one guy screwed up and like made the ship go down and needs an excuse. So like, it's the Kraken, man. It's not me.
So on the 18th
I don't know.
century
I am skeptical in nature, so hence my arguments are always. I always try to find logic in things.
This is why we draw a line between we know what's real and what's fantastical creatures.
This is just my
evidence
opinion.
really figures that.
So I'm telling you 100%, I could be wrong completely. I'm not saying that I'm right.
No, that's fair. That's a fair judgment to make. But so, okay, I'm talking specifically right now about that 18th century account. It was by someone called Eric Pontoppidan. I just butchered that name. So he was a bishop.
He's dead. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but him being a bishop. Him
like
being,
one guy in the comment, I am the child of Eric Hasutre, and you
That would be great grandchild by that point.
Yeah, they were like, I am offended.
I wouldn't be surprised, man. People on the internet these days. But so, okay, he had to earn a certain level of trust because in order to be a bishop, you have to earn a certain level of trust. And so, he might have been a fanatic too. That could be another reason. But he described it as a squid-like beast so large that when any part of its body stuck out of the water, it resembled a floating island. And so, like, I get where you're coming from, but according to his account, according to his account, there's no way there's a squid that is that big. Like,
it was not a squid, man. It's like a whole island.
I don't know if I'd be in my right mind if I saw that.
But yeah, it must have been the fumes or something. But, if that did exist, that would have been, wow. The Kraken supposedly used this many tentacles to ensnare ships' masts and drag them to the icy depths. Yeah, I think that's going a little over. Yeah, that's when they start to lose me because that sounds ridiculous. Like, if that
ship sunk and it was the Kraken. It was not faulty safety.
If that were the case, then we'd have already heard about them by now. Like, there'd be, recent records of ships going down because of, massive creatures like that. And I would assume it would have been really hard to bring down these creatures that, men would brag about bringing down the Krakens for ages to come. So, yeah, I'm guessing that's when they blew it up. Yeah, exactly my point.
What's the largest current known octopus squid known? I'm curious.
That's the one I told you about. I think you should see a picture of it. It's pretty giant.
Actually, on Twitter, I found some pretty large dogs, and they're as big as horses and bigger.
Largest squid known to man is 13 meters long. Which 13 meters wouldn't really It wouldn't be an
It's an
island.
island.
Like, I wouldn't say it's not an island. Like, the whole size of the giant, the biggest squid known to man, is not fit enough to be one island, let alone a single part of his body. I feel like, you know, whoever cited that is either going overboard or just, you know, had a little bit too much to drink, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, it sounds like a good
Also
story.
speaking, here's the thing. I do believe that there could be some sort of, like, maybe a political influence that influenced these sort of stories to gain some power over someone or something. Usually, like, humans are in general pretty manipulative creatures. So if they find something in their advantage, they will make you believe it, even if it's a giant island-sized octopus.
Yeah, and also given the fact that he was a fish,
Maybe, like, yeah, we're protected by the octopus, so don't you dare.
Yeah, that could be it too.
And it's funny if it's actually worked. Like, oh man, we can't invade them. There's like, they have a huge kraken there.
Yeah, you literally have to live by the sea.
I wouldn't put it past people to do that.
Yeah.
All these are possibilities that might work, but who knows? Maybe we're all wrong, and there was actually a giant island-sized octopus bringing down ships.
And it was hunted down for
you know what? You know what? That might actually be true. So one of the abilities that Krakens have, apparently, is that they can also create deadly whirlpools just by submerging themselves underwater. And whirlpools do exist. We've learned about whirlpools before, but we've never actually seen what's below a whirlpool. Like, have you guys actually, you know, went out to sea and looked at what's under a whirlpool?
It has to do with currents and stuff. Like, it's not a squid, man.
Dude, I told you I have the
yeah, but have you seen it? Have you actually seen it with your own two eyes, Ahmed? Like, can you confidently say that it's just the sea playing games and it has something to do with the current or like a vortex within the sea or whatever theory that you have?
I can make whirlpools in the bathtub. Doesn't mean I'm a kraken, man.
But see, the bathtub is big enough where you would seem like you're huge, right? Now, with the Kraken,
I'm the Kraken.
And the whole sea, you see where I'm coming from? You see where I'm coming from?
Okay, Haas. Revelation has been achieved.
It must have been true. It must have been true. Whirlpools do exist. Okay.
Dang it.
So,
I knew it was true. I tried to fight it, but you got me.
But you know what? So the article also does bring a point where tales of Kraken's wrath have sort of been embellished, right? So there are apparently plenty of tales and there are plenty of movies out there where, you know, they're making it seem like such a big thing. And so because of that embellishment, I don't believe it's as bad. Like, even if it does exist, it's not as bad as people make it out, right? Like, it's possibly not entirely as fanciful.
Yeah.
So it may
they
have
bring the same boat as I said. Like, they could have just seen a giant squid, and they're like, "Oh, that's the Kraken right there."
Exactly. It may have also been inspired by the sightings of an actual giant squid.
Remember, the ocean, actually, like, specifically, the ocean is such a mysterious place that we have not explored as humans fully. So, almost like it's fair game that there could be, like, some sort of gigantic, like, island-sized creatures that we have no idea exists.
Yeah, like leviathans deep down in the water.
Like, the oceans specifically are just so vast.
What you just mentioned is actually mentioned here in the article. So paleontologists have argued that prehistoric oceans were home to 100-foot-long cephalopods that fed on whale-sized Ichthyosaurus. So I'm guessing like water dinosaurs, like sea dinosaurs. That is, yeah, water dinosaurs.
It's not a Pokemon, man.
I don't remember where I saw this, but
Bulbasaur or Blastoise existed at some point.
This crazy jellyfish with long tentacles that reached ridiculously long.
As I said, when it comes to the ocean, it's fair game. Anything could be in there. God knows, man.
Okay, well, that's enough about sea creatures. So
Next creature. What do we have on the list, man? Introduce.
So
Griffin.
I'm sorry to be hopping onto something that gives you even more motion sickness, Stephanie, but our next creature is actually one of my favorites as well. The Griffin.
Oh, I love griffins.
It's simply because of the fact that, you
Hate
know,
them.
In
I
every video
Wait.
game, you need your trusty griffin mount.
would love a creature of my own to just
Hate
sort
how
of
they
stand.
look. You have no idea. It's like the worst character design I've ever seen.
Well, I mean,
Okay,
can
that's
see
a
your
pretty hideous design.
yeah, I can see your
I
point
like
there, but that's not necessarily
the
what they
armor.
look
What
like.
what the actual frick is happening here?
Yeah, honestly,
No offense to the artist, who most likely is dead at this point. But come on.
Why
This
is
is
the
pretty
color in cute green? That
Is that your biggest issue, Stephanie? Like the color?
it's
Yes.
cute green.
Stephanie, that's
That's not
probably
the problem.
because you rode on his back at some point and just started throwing up all over his face.
Throwing up in the wings.
That's the only reason why I would imagine it would be green and look like that. Wow.
They both look terrified, to be honest.
Well, one
Not
of
sure
them
who's
is
eating
fighting.
who at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't even know what's going on there. But you know,
But
that's not
here's the thing: the Griffin.
necessarily-
I am almost 100% sure that it's just the work of a creative person.
Yeah. Well, let's find out. Actually,
I refuse to believe that this is like three weird-looking animals mixed together and they fly and come on, man, give me a break.
So
I mean,
okay.
I have a soft part for it. A little bit. Just because it's iconic and lots of, symbolism and flags. And, yeah.
But is it true? I doubt it.
I mean, so
It's
okay,
actually
let's
really common in the English royalty.
actually look at the facts, like between quotations, right? According to this history article, it's an intimidating blend of two different predators. The griffin was said to possess the body and back legs of a lion, as well as the wings, beak, and talons of a hawk or eagle. So this is another one of those cases where, remember when I was discussing like Mara? Like I feel like that's made up. This is another one of those things where I feel like, yeah, that does not sound right. It just sounds like, someone wasn't really that creative with their imagination.
They just
Tails?
put a lot of different things from aspects of animals that they thought represented something cool and be like, let's put this all together.
Exactly.
Remember, they didn't have video games back then, so this is the closest thing to it.
So Tales of the
This is a nice
Flying...
collage we have here.
Yeah, Tales of the Flying Behemoths most likely originated in the Middle East, but they later became a popular motive in ancient
Great, so it's
Greek
our fault.
literature. It's definitely bullshit, though. I can tell you that. That means that it's definitely
it's our
bullshit.
fault. So those Middle Easterns were
Because
high or something.
because you know how Middle Easterners are, given the fact that
Dramatic.
you are from
Yes,
the
they
Middle
are.
East, yep, dramatic, and just always like to make things a lot bigger than they are. They always come up with the craziest
It's
ideas.
fun, so I don't blame them.
Like the idea of
And
this
then I
podcast.
saw a lion, goat, chicken, and it was so cool. Like, yes, I saw it too.
So the Griffin legend was later picked up in the 14th century in a largely fictional travel log by Sir John Mandeville, who described the creatures as more strong than 8 lions and 100 eagles. Griffins were revered for their intelligence and dedication to monogamy. They supposedly mated for life, but they could also...
Basically, they just put a whole bunch of idealisms on this creature and said, let's make this a symbol for us.
Super strong one, and my family shield has a griffin, so we're as strong as a griffin. I think that's how it went.
It seems...
And also, we're true to our mate for life.
Yeah, I mean, something about that just doesn't seem... I can't put 2 and 2 together. How does a creature that look like that prefer to just spend all of their time mating. Like, I don't see it
I
happening.
mean,
And I don't even see how they're doing it. Like, is it tail?
all the dudes thought that if they were an alpha male, they'd get all the ladies. So of course, they got it. They're going to keep their woman.
Man,
Like,
I want an intelligent argument. Give me a more feasible
But see, like
Please.
they didn't specify the gender here. Like, they didn't say if it was like, specifically the males who just did that all the time, or the females.
Man, please do not.
We should think that it's a general idea, yeah. And so, like, I still
It's too early for that, man. Just move along.
Yeah.
So the bees rip flesh with their razor-sharp talons, and they were also known to fly their victims to great heights before dropping them to their deaths.
That sounds
Eerie.
like an asshole move, but okay.
Yeah.
According to...
Like, you have sharp talons and beaks, just...
Okay, wait.
Don't throw them off.
So this is the interesting part, guys. So apparently, this has been researched. According to a researcher, Adrian Mayer, legends of the griffin could be inspired by early encounters with dinosaur fossils. That must be the lamest dinosaur that has ever been known to exist. Like, for
I mean,
real.
it's definitely not going to be that color. Please let it not be that color.
Yeah, to be honest with you guys, like, I was excited talking about the griffin.
I don't like that picture down.
But, like, seeing that that's how it's represented, like, in like, the old mythology, I'm not a fan anymore. The reason why I was a fan is because, I don't know if you guys played that game, Dragon Dogma's Griffin. So that right there is the reason why I love just the idea of griffins, right? And I think Harry Potter also had, like, their own representation of griffins, and that looks super cool. And so, like, yeah, this is what I meant when I said that, griffins were one of my favorites, because imagine owning a pet like Stan. But so yeah,
have to like the artistic. Okay, I really don't like that picture.
That's enough about that. Let's move on to the magic.
Oh, fuck this! No, I hate stuff like this. This is like Attack on Titans shit. Oh.
Yeah, that I have no idea what that is, to be honest. I think I heard of Manticores before, but I always had a different idea of them. Like, I knew
they could have a man.
Yeah, I knew they involved lions, but I didn't know that they had a man's head. That's quite odd, actually. I don't know what to think about this one. It seems so foreboding.
3 rows of teeth like a shark.
They do? Okay.
Makes a bellow sound like a trumpet, and has an insatiable appetite for human flesh. No, thank you.
Let's look them up. So apparently they're one of the most forbidding of all mythical creatures. The Manticore was a bloodthirsty quadruped that supposedly sported the head of a blue-eyed man, the auburn body of a lion, and the stinging tail of a scorpion. See, that's another one of these, like, cocktails that I'm not really a fan of. It just doesn't seem original.
Imagination went a little too far.
Yeah, it does not seem original. The legend of this deadly hybrid first began with Greek authors such as Thesaeus, who chronicled...
Is this like ancient Slender Man?
Yeah, he chronicled it in a book about India. So it's based in India. It's founded in India, which I don't think. Yeah, I don't think that's surprising, because India has, like, all these weird forms of all these creatures that we may have heard of from one point or another, and they have, like, their own look for them. Like all their, like, the Indian gods of olden times. They have so many different types, right? Like for example, what they would consider, Zeus from the Greek mythology to be in their mythology, like Vignish or creatures.
They have a weird thing about,
and they have like an odd outlook of their creatures and all that. So yeah, that is not surprising. Actually, they would come up with something like that. Tessius and others describe the Manticore as having 3 rows of teeth like a shark and a tuneful bellow that sounded like a trumpet.
I swear, like, I always leave for a few minutes and I come back to the weirdest shit. Like, what's this? Please, explain to me.
I have no idea, man. I have
never seen this creature before. What is it, like some creepy uncle? Like,
my favorite part about it is the mustache. Like, guys, that mustache is just wow.
Mustache is like spot on. Like those claws must have some sort of scissors to like style them.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So
maybe it's the tail. The tail has.
You know what you're gonna love about this? You know what you're gonna love about this, Ahmed? It's actually an Indian-based creature. Film India.
Exactly.
So at this point, it's actually easier to fathom that something like that actually exists. If it's based.
Okay, let's do a little vote. Should we skip the creature or not? Because I don't even know where to start with this guy.
We're almost at the end of it.
This one's just.
Yeah. After
I think here's the thing. Here's what happened. One guy got killed by a hedgehog. That's so embarrassing, so they made up this creature to say, like, yeah, it got struck by its tail and it was such a big creature.
Let's give him the benefit
of
the doubt,
I could find.
Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's actually look at other manticores. Oh, see, that is what I'm talking about. Like, this is what I know. So, I've never heard of a manticore with a human's head. But,
okay, so there's no mustache.
Yeah.
No, the thing is,
these type of manticores
are older than these newer renditions. I feel like these new, pictures are inspirations from that, but it really, I think there's a reason why they changed the appearance.
It looks stupid.
Exactly.
Yeah, it looks stupid. I mean, the name is cool.
I don't think this would work anywhere. Like
cool.
in under any context, I don't think this would work. Like even in like the shittiest museum of like most random shit ever, I don't think that would be appropriate to have something like that.
Scorpion, lion, dragon, devil.
That looks like the type of thing that you would see in a nightmare that you just never want to remember again. It
sounds like a good boss for a game.
Historical museum property.
Sounds like a good box for a Dark Souls game. See, like that, I could imagine that in Dark Souls, but
in reality, I think someone is just very heavily inspired and was really high, and they're like, "Oh man, I had the worst trip."
So, according to the Greek philosopher that came up with this, the manticore was capable of paralyzing or killing its victims from a distance by firing stingers from its tail as if from a bow. It seems that, the reason why they made it look that way is because they intentionally wanted it to look threatening or scary. So, like the idea of it is that it's a creature that actually hunts you down. So it's a predator.
Yeah, I wouldn't say my uncle or something got deformed, had his head mutilated, and put up some kind of weird aspect.
I mean, if it's like a pedophile uncle, then yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't really imagine any uncle looking like that. Yeah, that's nasty.
But that fine mustache, man.
Moving on from that weirdness into even more weirdness, the basilisk. I don't know why the article decided to choose that for it.
Google an image of a basilisk, because
I know, like, as far as I know from basilisks, they're lizards. I don't know about their old account. So the idea of this article is that it's a historic article, right? So it's based off of the very first versions of all the creatures that we're mentioning. And so, like, apparently basilisks look like that. Apparently they look like, half chicken, half lizard, half bat, or I don't know what the hell it is.
But you got me hooked with the Kraken, and there was like an actually valid argument for it. Then things went downhill.
I know, it just kept getting worse and worse. But it's still
Like,
interesting because
it's a chicken with a bat, and like it used to eat sheep. Like,
This is like the teacher who was trying to teach me Photoshop and how to put like different segments together. They're just putting different parts.
You know what, guys? This might actually be
Dark Ages.
This Photoshop of the Dark Ages, I swear.
This might be a whole other thing. This might be a whole other episode, guys. We might have actually unraveled the truth behind the coronavirus. It could have been from one of these creatures. Like, one of these creatures could actually exist. Like, specifically that half bat, half chicken,
So
half
this
lizard
creature
thing.
caused the COVID.
And that is what someone ate at some point and got infected.
I mean, also speaking, if you eat something that looks like this, you deserve it.
But why does everybody else have to suffer for your horrid, disgusting mistake? Damn.
I mean,
Okay.
that's some dry-looking wings there. I wouldn't want to eat that.
That really.
I don't know, some
looks
desperate
just
evil, man. I don't know.
off-putting.
I mean,
That
that
is
neck looks
so-
juicy, but like.
off-putting. Don't even joke about that. That is nasty, man. Like, I know it's Ramadan, where we're at right now, but you didn't have to ruin my appetite for like, years to come. No, I never want to remember that ever again.
Basically, like, we're supposed to be discussing them seriously. We're like, oh, this guy's ugly.
Okay, let's get serious about it for a second, guys. So accounts of the fearsome basilisk date back to the 1st century Roman writer Pliny the Elder, whose famous natural history included entries on the fantastical creatures and exotic races of deformed men. I wouldn't say just men. Like, they must have had some real issues. It's not just men they deformed here. Pliny described the basilisk as a snake-like animal with markings on its head that resembled a crown. But by the Middle Ages, it had morphed into a fiendish serpent with the head of a rooster and the wings of a dragon or bat. So I guess we were on point on what this actually looked like. The basilisk was said to possess a deadly bite and venomous breath, but it could also kill a man just by looking at him. So he's got sort of like a Medusa superpower where apparently he could petrify just from eyesight.
I mean, I don't imagine being seduced by this thing, but okay.
Imagine it.
Who knows, man? Dude, when you're hungry, anything works, man. Like who knows? When you're famished and you're in the middle of the desert and there's nothing else.
This chicken wing comes to me like, I am seducing you. I'll be like, I might go for it.
How far would you be willing to go, man? that's what it's about at the end
I
of the
think
day.
I'm gonna die in a corner over there. Bye.
Would-be basilisk hunters countered this death stare by carrying mirrors in the hope that the creature would meet its own gaze and drop dead. But they also enlisted the help of weasels, which were believed to be immune to its poison. Wow. Like, this is actually going in depth about
Oh, wait,
this.
it also has poison? That's a good skill.
Okay, so this is
this guy
really
could have been a
odd.
game developer or a game lore developer. He's got the background and everything.
No, so guys, this is based off of
I think-
history. So this is based off of like a historic event. That's why it's mentioned. So someone actually went and mentioned their own account of facing something like this. And so this is when it starts getting really weird. Like we're sitting making fun of this creature when at some point we might actually encounter one. So be careful, guys. Be careful of what you're saying.
Because the skill that it has, that it says poison.
Nowadays, I'm pretty
careful.
sure someone would have documented this ugly creature of a specimen by now if it was still in existence.
And you don't know, maybe the chicken seduced him. So
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't say seduce.
So before you take the camera, it seduces you. I can't take this seriously. Sorry.
That is wow. Okay, so the basilisk supposedly originated in North Africa, but tales of European encounters with it are found throughout the Middle Ages. One particularly dubious account from 1587 in Poland describes how a man clad in a mirror-covered leather suit hunted and captured a basilisk after it killed 2 small girls and a nursemaid. Okay, guys, this is just like this is way too serious right now. So 1587.
That chicken means business.
1587. That was such a long time ago. That's like end of what, like 16th century? And so like I'm assuming a lot of things existed back then that don't exist these days. And so something like that could have actually potentially existed.
Maybe like a chicken in a vat got funky and for a while there and produced this thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Some bloodthirsty chicken.
Bloodthirsty chicken.
Wow.
Oh man, I'm sorry. I know we're supposed to be serious.
I know, but guys, this seems like such an accurate account of an event that happened during that time, and so this is why I'm just confused. Like, should I be taking this seriously, or like is this all jokes at the end of the day? Because
like I know, like we started well with the Kraken, but we went down to
Sorry.
Mr. Chicken here, and like
I can't take it seriously when I
That's
look at
so
that picture. I mean,
enough of that. Seriously, enough of that. Okay, so
please give me a good monster.
on to the next one. I've never heard of this one before. Apparently, it's called the Blemye. Along with legends of
Interesting.
grotesque monsters and sea creatures, ancient and medieval travelers often return to Europe with tales of so-called wild men living in the unmapped regions of Asia and Africa.
These are called homeless people.
they don't shave at all.
And that's not how they look like.
Oh my god! I don't know
I've
what
seen
kind
some
of
homeless people. That's not how they
I don't
look
know
like.
what kind of homeless people you know, buddy, but I don't want to
That's how they
ever
look
see
like that.
anyone on the street
But
that
seriously,
looks
where's
like
the
that. Otherwise, I'm never leaving my home ever again. What is
Wait,
that?
Got some change, bro. Like he's actually like reaching out with his hand, like got some change.
I'm trying to look at the picture. Was there hair hanging down?
That's so true. Like he has his hand pointed out, like he wants some money or
Like,
something.
hey man, got some change. Like I'm hungry.
dude. Let's just take a second and try to make sense of what's between their legs. Like,
It
is
doesn't
that-
mean they're investigating to
are
find
we
out what
not?
that thing is,
Are
but,
we not? Are we not going to talk about what that is? Like, are we just gonna let that hang the way it's hanging right
I
now?
think these are some well endowed hobos. So I don't know, man.
This,
I
no,
think it has
man.
the heads of dogs, but I don't see it.
Nah, dude. It's like I'm starting to get worried now because now I feel like every time I pass by a homeless person begging for money and I don't have change and I just leave him be,
I
I
take
feel
out
like-
the bat and like remove
I
their
feel
head.
like I'm gonna have to
Okay,
be
yeah,
watching. I feel like I'm gonna have to be
Imagine
watching
the
my back.
scenario. You
from
meet
now
a person
on.
that doesn't look like you, and you're just like, what is this mystical creature?
It's a blimye.
Shall I call it? Tomorrow.
It's a blimye. Yep, that's the one.
Guys, if there's anything to be learned from this, dear viewers, is always carry change from now on, because you don't want to look over your back and see what it goes.
He faced with this guy.
Wow. Okay,
I don't
so
think
one of
change will help them. Just like proper hygiene, some clothing, some food.
Get a stable
That'd
job,
be nice.
insurance.
ahead,
Exactly. And those nights will like be stack up and everything.
a second eye, maybe. Like, are you guys seeing what I'm seeing?
Hey man, look.
Some scissors to
Don't
get
be
whatever's hanging
superficial,
down there.
okay? Beauty is also on the inside.
One of the most unusual groups was the Bellmen, a race of hairy primitives who lacked heads but had a face situated in their upper body. The tribe first appeared in Herodotus' The Histories, where they were described as a species of headless men from North Africa who had their eyes in their chests. Herodotus is actually a really famous Greek historian.
Yeah, I actually remembered him after you showed me a picture of him. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting that that he gave his own account of it, but at the same time, you can't really take most of these philosophers seriously about their accounts since they didn't have the technology or the science that we now have to actually come up with correct hypothesis about all of it. So references to the Bellarmine or creatures like them later cropped up in the writings of Pliny the Elder, the reports of Sir Walter Raleigh, and even in the Shakespeare's Othello. Their exotic appearance served as an object of both fascination and disgust for Europeans, and they became a common motive and an art in the pre-Enlightenment era. So you as an artist could possibly understand where they're coming from.
So this is basically an artistic rendition, not from the people who saw it, but from people who see the accounts.
Exactly. I still don't understand the point of whatever's going on between their legs. Like that, what sort of artistic rendition do you think they were going to there? Because that is highly indicative of something that is disgusting. And I don't think it's right. Like, I don't think maybe they had the wrong idea. Back then, they had sort of a different philosophy. I don't... What do you think?
I honestly don't know, man. I don't know what to feel about this.
See, this is actually coming from an artist, so a humble person like me with no art background is just even more confused at this point.
They describe this as South African people, but with weird faces.
Well, it's not like I don't know how you're seeing it. What I'm seeing, yeah, it not just the growth, but it looks like like they have sort of overgrown pubes, and so I don't understand what the point of that was. Like they were styling their, like that was a thing. You could style your pubes and just like walk around with like spiky pubes or like a hairstyle down there, and it would just look fashionable.
I feel like it has to be an exaggeration of some sort.
Wow. Maybe. That's just so odd.
I just can't.
I wonder how life would be if that actually carried on, like if you had people walking around, like, styling around their downstairs region the same way these people did, but I don't even want to think about it.
Pretend you take this seriously. This kind of weird happenstance of a face appearing in the shoulders like that. If it's believable, that would mean some sort of inbreeding or something malfunctioned, because that's not a normal human shape, having a face where the shoulders are at. That's just weird.
Oh, so you're looking at it from like a different perspective, where it could have been that, like for example, when you get deformed children born out of incest, that could be the case of what's happening. Like they were deformed one way or another. It shouldn't necessarily be incest, but maybe like some sort of
but this is really cool, actually.
Nuclear radiation that went overboard. Yeah.
Off topic, but this is actually really cool. So there was a family that got stuck in the mountaintop. So of course they inbred with each other.
Yeah.
And their children had blue skin. Lots of the family members had blue skin.
Mm-hmm.
Like look up actual blue people.
So that actually existed, or was that
That
just
actually exists. It's an actual thing. Because of inbreeding, they had blue skin.
interesting? Huh. So I guess anything could happen. Anything could happen. So that isn't as far fetched as we might think it is. You know, like maybe that was going on downstairs, but you know, maybe some form of deformity caused a certain race of people to appear a certain way. You know, whether it's
But I still
inbreeding,
think they should have a head on top of your shoulders. Having the head in between, that's still weird to me, in between the chest.
I mean, it's not impossible to have your organs sort of smudged together and still be able to survive, like still be able to function.
Yeah,
but I think the brain is such a vital part that it, it really does need its sort of own medium.
Yeah, if the brain was there, it would need a protection of some.
Exactly. Who knows what's going on there? Oh wow! So apparently there were cannibals.
Oh,
and I don't even see like how that would be possible. It doesn't look like they could eat from anywhere in their bodies. Really?
So their chest on like here.
That's nasty looking.
I don't know. I remember reading something a while back. There's weird effects to people who do cannibalism too. I don't remember much, but it's just not.
Yeah, they become different. I believe it's a psychological thing, and I feel like it also it causes some physical restraints on you. But I think it's mostly a psychological thing where if you start eating the flesh of another man, you start losing your mind. Kind of like how mad cow disease works, but it's on steroids.
Yeah.
Let's move on to one that's actually worth staying on, because I feel like all the previous ones have just been a little off-putting. Rock. I've heard about that one. I've heard about it quite a few times, and I think is actually one of the beasts that you get to fight in Shadow of the Colossus. A really cool-looking king of the skies, sort of. A popular
looks like
myth.
Another mix of like a falcon or eagle.
Yeah, I think it's sort of its own breed, though. So okay, let's actually read up about it. A popular myth among travelers and merchants: the rock was a giant bird of prey, rumored to be strong that it could snatch an elephant from the ground. See, that's what I mean, right? Like it's not even like a crossbreed or anything like that. It's just the king of the skies. Like it's its own thing, but big enough to snatch an elephant. Wow, that seems too ridiculous. Stories of the giant fowls originated in Arabic fairy tales and mythology before making their way to the West in accounts by travelers like Marco Polo, who noted that the rock's preferred hunting method was to drop its victims from deadly heights and then prey upon the carcass. Interesting. So it is like its own breed, but it still carries that, like, you know, a predator from the sky mentality, right? Where they carry their prey, and most commonly, you know, the big snakes and pythons, and just like drop them from really high above the ground and then just feed on.
Well, this thing seems like the most plausible of the creatures, honestly.
Yeah, it really does.
Because there are actual skeletons of big birds.
Yeah, but really as big as one that could carry a massive elephant and just be able to fly with him easily, just with the muscles of its wings. It seems...
Yeah, no.
Insane.
I think that was an exaggeration. That is the exaggeration.
But the fact that Marco Polo referenced it, and the fact that, you know, like one of the really popular historians of our time out here in the Middle East, Ibn Battuta, a Moroccan philosopher. He wrote that he once confused a rock for a floating mountain because of its size. And other legends stated that its wingspan, typically described as being about 50 feet, was so huge that it could bolt out the sun. So it seems like there are plenty of sightings for these creatures, and by like well-known historians / travelers that have been around the world, during the 17th century, and they were able to, spot something that I guess it wouldn't really be that hard not to spot if it's as they say, like confusing a bird with a mountain. That's not something they can just do.
That's my one thing about these sightings of these huge creatures. If they were as huge as they say, also you have to account, do they have the typical lifespan? If so, then they'd be dead, but you'd think there'd be, similar sized creatures maybe, or maybe they were the king of their kind, sort of?
Yeah.
Who knows?
I think that could be the case, and it brings me to the point that I discussed earlier, if you remember, Steph, where, it's in the nature of man to destroy any and all what they would consider to be threats, even though they don't quite understand it. So even though it might not be a threat to them, even though it might not actually be a threat to them, per se, yet there are records of all these creatures. Like, even during our lifespan, there are creatures that are, dying out. Like, who knows, maybe hundreds of years from now, when people would actually see a panda, they would think that, it's just, a bunch of crazy people way back in the day that thought they saw a bear that looked friendly or looked, the way the panda looks. It could be that a lot of these creatures did exist at some point, but man,
they were probably hunted into extinction.
Exactly. Man not only buried them in the mud, but they also buried their own shame, because they decided not to bring up the fact that they did that to these creatures.
It's not like they had social media back then and be like, look at my big kill, guys.
Yeah, despite them not being hostile towards them. You see what I mean? And so I feel like we should
just their sheer size was intimidating.
Well, yeah, intimidation is one thing, but okay, so for example, you said it yourself. You're, like 5 feet tall, and you don't feel like you would ever be intimidating to anyone. But say, like, you have people with, like NBA players with like a big stature, and for you, they would be extremely intimidating, right? Because of their size. Does that mean you should, go and buy like a gun and just start shooting them and shooting all of them? Because if that's the case, then we would all be extinct, and you would be the only person left on Earth. I don't think there are many people who are as short as or as small as. So I feel like you should live and let live. That's the point. I didn't do it to make you feel bad. Come on, Steph. You know what I mean?
I guess the other thing is, these were travelers, they were exploring places for the first time, and it's like, they see these terrifying big-ass creatures, and it's like, and I mean, if they can do as they say, pick up, they pick up their prey and then drop them, I'm like, I wouldn't want that near me.
Yeah. But see, since there's a record of it, Steph, I feel like that's the biggest proof that these creatures maybe existed, and they just let, these travelers and historians, they let them be. They went and they researched these creatures. They looked at them from obviously many different angles, to the point where they're able to draw them and discuss them in detail. What their tails were made of, what their skins were made of, and all that. Like, you don't just do that by like a quick sighting of the creature and then just like go to hiding and then claim all that. No, it should have been like, or at least it feels like it should have been where they sort of had an in-depth analysis of these creatures, and yet they were able to survive and tell the tale. And so this is, and this is apparent. Man has always been destructive towards things that they don't understand, things that they cannot communicate. Just because of the fact that they sort of have that ego where they feel like they should always be at the top of the food chain, and anything that seems that can potentially topple that food chain or potentially harm you, they would have to take it down. I think that's one thing we should definitely be conscious of, Steph, as humans.
Yeah, I won't kick your kneecaps because you're taller than me. Don't worry.
I hope not. And with that, I think we could end our episode.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
So
Steph,
my
do you have anything you want to add?
is, I think a lot of those creatures were like embellishments, kind of exaggerated a bit, but some of them are believable, but all we can say is who knows, it's all speculation.
Guys, how about you tell us what you guys think? Steph thinks that it may have been an embellishment. I think that maybe, we've seen some pretty gnarly things in history. Things that, are sort of hard to believe. Whether, you're religious or whether you believe in the stories of philosophers or fanatics or whatever. Tell us what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you think these creatures existed at some point? Or do you think it's all just the imagination of some possibly doped up philosopher?